Night Tuivasa versus Tybura takes place this weekend on Saturday night at the UFC Apex, and there's not. It's a pretty decent card, especially when we compare with the last fight night card. It's not the best card that there could be at the Apex, but it's definitely a decent card. Last Apex card, there was a lot of not big names, but hyped up prospects, exciting matchups, and while there is less of those on this card, I agree with that. There's definitely some fights to look forward to on this one, and I'll be breaking those down for you guys and giving you my predictions on them. So without further ado, let's get into the first fight I'll be talking about, which is Thiago Moises versus Mitch Ramirez. Now, when I first started doing research on this fight, I just assumed that Mitch Ramirez was younger because he has way less fights. He has less top level experience. And yeah, I mean he's making his UFC debut tonight. So it's his UFC not tonight, tomorrow night. He's never fought in the UFC. He's only had 9 fights, but he's 3 years older than Thiago Moises, who has been in the UFC for a while now and has almost 25 pro fights. So it's like when I was doing the research for this fight, I was just kind of assumed that Mitch Ramirez was younger, but he's actually 3 years older. So for this fight, it's like Thiago's younger with more experience, especially at the highest level. He's been in there with Islam, Benoit Saint Denis. Well, he did lose both those fights. The experience of being in there with the top level guys like that, being at the level where you get matched up with them in the first place, and I think he has, and he has decent wins. He has some decent wins over guys like he has wins over guys like, I mean, these guys aren't really that good, but Christos Giagos, Alexander Hernandez, Bobby Green, Michael Johnson, like these guys aren't the best, but like for somebody who's never fought in the UFC, that's very high level competition in comparison. Mitch Ramirez has good finishing ability. He does have, I believe he has only one win by decision out of 8 wins, which is good. That's a good finishing percentage. If Mitch was to win, it would likely be inside the distance, but I believe that Thiago Moises is going to win this fight pretty comfortably. I think he'll win by decision, but I do think that there could a third round sub could be there. I think that the finishing potential is a possibility for Thiago Moises. He's not really a finisher on the feet, but he is a finisher on the ground. So if he could get Mitch Ramirez down early, work from there, especially I could actually see either a late sub. I could also kind of see an early sub. If he's able to get Mitch Ramirez down early, and they're both still dry, I could see him latching up like an armbar or maybe even a Darce choke and getting Mitch out of there early. But I think that Moises will win this one by clear decision and maybe a late sub. The next fight I'll be going over is Josh Culibao versus Danny Silva. Now, this is actually a hard fight to pick because Danny Silva looked so good on the Contender Series, and while Culibao has looked good he's in the UFC, while he has looked good in some fights, he's also looked kind of iffy in other fights, if you know what I mean. Like, he got smoked by Jalen Turner, got dog walked by Lerone Murphy, but like those are really good guys. And the Melsick win was a good win. That like he finished that guy, the 7-1 guy, pretty decent. That was a good win. Split decision though over Seungwoo Choi. Like, I don't know. That's just not the best look because Seungwoo Choi, I like him. He's entertaining, but he's kind of like a killer be killed guy where he's gonna try and finish you to the extent that he's sort of gonna leave the finish, leave an opportunity for you to finish him out there, if you know what I mean. But he also has a win over the guy Shailin. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but that guy has a ton of experience. I remember I watched that fight, and that guy has had a ton of it. It caught me off guard how much experience that guy had. His win over him, draw with Charles Jourdain, so that's probably like the best, one of the better fights on his record in terms of talking about his experience. But it's tough to pick him because he doesn't really have many good wins, and Danny Silva doesn't either. But Danny Silva looked really good on the Contender Series. His boxing looked amazing. His pressure, his pace, his gas tank all looked good, and I could really see him just piecing up Josh Culibao for 3 rounds and maybe even finding a finish. Like, I really could see that. But Josh Culibao does have a pretty good grappling game. He is decently well-rounded, so I could see him testing the grappling and the takedown defense of Silva. But honestly, I was so impressed with Silva showing on the Contender Series more impressed than I have been with any of Josh Kulibao's wins. So I'm gonna pick Danny Silva to win this one by unanimous decision. But I think it'll be close, like 2 rounds to one. Uh, the next fight on the card that I'll be talking about, Ode Osborne versus Jafel Filio. Now, Filio had a pretty close fight against Muhammad Makayev, where he showed off his impressive grappling and submission ability, and he even had some serious moments in that fight, like that knee bar. Um, Ode is a dangerous striker, especially early, but his wrestling and his ground game is definitely a hole in his game. That's definitely a hole in his game that Filio is going to be able to get the takedowns on Ode pretty early. And I think he's going to find the finish on Ode Osborne. You know, he's only got 1 win by decision. He's got 9 wins by submission, 5 TKOs. I really think he's going to be able to find the submission on Ode. He's got the finishing ability on the feet. On the ground. And I just don't see Ode having the grappling to be able to keep this guy off of him and stop him from getting a submission. So my official prediction for this one will be Jafel Filio by round 2 sub. Next up is Mike Davis versus Natan Levy. Now, Mike Davis has not been active. Has only fought 3 times since 2019. But in his entire career, he's only ever lost to Gilbert Burns and Sadiq Youssef on the Contender Series, who are both ranked contenders in their respective division. And Gilbert Burns has fought for a title before. So, you know, those aren't bad losses. And Levy is decent and is pretty well-rounded. But I'm just going to pick Mike Davis to beat him pretty clearly. Because I think that unless Davis shows up looking like shit and like a shell of himself, I think he just has all the tools to outclass Levy and has only lost to fighters who are much higher caliber than Levy. How Davis wins, I'm not sure if he'll win by finish or decision. You know, in his career, he's got 8 finishes and 2 decisions for his wins. His last 2 UFC wins have both been decisions, but those have been over 10-0 Mason Jones and 6-2 Vyacheslav Borchev, who Vyacheslav Borchev is a tough fighter. You know, he just went life and death with Nazim back in November at UFC 295. So, he's a tough guy to get out of there. And Mason Jones was an undefeated guy, 10-0, a lot of hype behind him, and those were both decisions. So, I don't know if he'll be able to get the finish over Natan Levy. I don't know if I'll pick him to get the decision the finish, or will I? No, I'm gonna go decision. I'm gonna go Mike Davis by unanimous decision. That's my official prediction for this one. Next fight that I'm gonna be going over is Gerald Meerschaert versus Brian Barberena. Now, in my opinion, this fight is a complete mismatch. Not hard to pick at all. Brian's coming off a loss to Mahmoud Muradov, where he just looked like absolute shit. Wherever the fight went, Brian looked awful and was getting outworked and outclassed. And don't get me wrong, Mahmoud Muradov is a good fighter and a big guy, but he's not elite. And GM3 finished him in the past by submission. Gerald Meerschaert just had a close fight with Andre Petroski, and he also beat Bruno Silva before that, also by submission. I think that GM3 will be able to stand with Barberena. I don't think it's going to be like on the feet he's outgunned or outclassed. I think he'll be able to stand with Barberena, probably, in my opinion, even win some of the exchanges on the feet, and he'll eventually get him down and be able to work on the mat. And I think once he gets Barberena down, it's pretty much a wrap. And I think that he's going to get him down in the second round, and he's going to find the submission. So my official prediction for this fight is Gerald Meerschaert by second round submission. I think he's going to make this one look pretty easy, in my opinion. I don't know what Brian Barberena is doing at middleweight. Next fight on the card is one that I'm excited for. Christian Rodriguez versus Isaac Dulgarian. Now, Christian Rodriguez is good, but he is a weight bully, and he missed weight for both of his best wins over Simon and Rosas Jr. And both of those guys are young fighters, 23 and 19 years old. So they're young. They're not fully, developed grown men. Well, they are grown men, but they're not, full-grown 25-plus men who have their full-grown frame. And they're both bantamweights. Isaac Dulgarian is a 27-year-old featherweight who's a former NCAA college wrestler and is a beast of an athlete. Christian just isn't going to have the same physical advantages over Isaac that he had over both Simon and Raul Rosas Jr., which helped him win both those fights. Dulgarian's wrestling chops will likely be too much for Christian C-Rod, as he's been taken down by lesser grapplers, and Dulgarian has finished everyone he's fought inside the first round. I think that Dulgarian is going to bulldoze Christian Rodriguez, and I think he's going to finish him in the second round with ground and pound. I don't think he'll get Christian out of there in round one because Christian Rodriguez has shown ability to survive early onslaughts, especially on the ground. But I just don't think he'll be able to survive round after round of Bulgarian taking him down, holding him down, and just beating the crap out of him, which is what he's done to everybody he's fought. And I really just and now that Christian Rodriguez is moving up a weight class, he's not going to have the size advantage, the physical advantage that he's had at bantamweight since he's missed weight for those fights. He's not going to have that advantage anymore at featherweight, fighting an undefeated finisher beast with a wrestling background like Bulgarian. I don't think it's going to end well for Christian Rodriguez, and I think that round two, ground and pound finish for Bulgarian is my official prediction. Next fight I'll be going over is OSP versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. Now, not too much to say about this one. Unless OSP is able to get like a miraculous takedown and find the early sub on Kennedy, then I think this is going to be pretty brutal. I'm going to pick Kennedy Nzechukwu by first round KO, as OSP should be retired right now. Kennedy is definitely not a world beater, but he KO'd guys like people forget. He KO'd Carlos Olberg, and he's also KO'd Ion Cutelaba. And I know, again, no, those guys are not world beaters, but they're definitely better than OSP at this stage of his career. And I just think that unless OSP is able to get Kennedy down early, he's going to have to stand with him. And I think that Kennedy's going to find the chin. Like, I know Kennedy himself doesn't have an iron chin, but I just don't see him getting cracked by the ghost of OSP. And I think he's going to find the chin pretty early, and I think he's going to KO OSP in the first round. Next up is the co-main event, Brian Battle versus Ange Loosa. Now, I think that Ange Loosa is going to look to use his wrestling and his physicality to win the fight and by getting Brian down often and early, similar to how Renat Fakhretdinov did against Brian. But outside of that fight with Renat Fakhretdinov, who was on a crazy win streak at the time, and is still on an unbeaten streak. Outside of that fight, Brian's defensive grappling has been pretty decent and has been steadily improving, and he's also a dangerous striker with 2 KOs in the opening minute already in his UFC career. I think that Ange will have to respect Brian's ability on the feet, and I think that this is going to hinder his takedown game as well as let Brian get going and start to work and set things up on the feet. I think the way this fight will play out is I think that Ange Loosa is going to come out blasting, not on the feet, like come out explosive, try and take Brian down early, and I think that he'll win the first round when he's fresh and more explosive, not tired, not sweaty, and he's dry. Both guys are dry. I think that Ange Loosa will win the first round, but I think that Brian Battle is going to edge round 2 and round 3. And I think he's got great striking, pretty good clinch work, decent grappling, and yeah, I think I could see Brian winning all 3 rounds as well if Ange doesn't win the first. I just think he's better than Ange Loosa with a higher ceiling. You know, he's got a big frame for the division, got that long strikes like that head kick. He's also got good counterboxing in the pocket, decent grappling, good clinch work, KO power. You know, I think he's just better than Ange Loosa, and I think he's going to be able to beat him by decision here. And I think it'll be pretty clear when it's all said and done. Now, on to the main event. Tai Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura. Now, I remember I saw a post the other day online, I think it was Instagram, where Tai Tuivasa was saying, like, oh, I've only lost to elite guys like Pav and Gain, Gon, and Volkov. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know, that's true. He has only ever lost to elite guys, such as he lost to Pavlovich, he lost to Sirogan, he lost to Volkov. And that is true, you know, those are the only guys that he's lost to in recent memory. And those guys are all elite. You know, like Pavlovich just fought for the title in November, was on a crazy first-round knockout streak, and Tuivasa was one of them. Gon, former interim champ. Volkov. I mean, I don't really need to say much. Volkov's absolute veteran, legend of the game in the heavyweight division. And Volkov has also beaten Tybura, but one thing to note is Tybura himself has, I mean, not really. I mean, in recent memory, yeah, he's only lost to Tommy Aspinall and Volkov himself, and he's been on he was on a 5-fight win streak before when he lost to Volkov. He was on a 2-fight win streak when he lost to Aspinall. So he's been beating guys, but like, who's he been beating? You know, Big Ben Rothwell, Greg Hardy by round 2 KO. I mean, TKO on the ground, Tuivasa KO'd him. Walt Harris, ground and pound round 1, that's a decent win. But like, Sergey Spivak, that's a good win by decision. But then you look at the losses. 59-second KO to Augusto Sakai. Second round KO to Shamil Shamil. Third round knockout to Derek Lewis. I mean, decision to Verdum, that's not a bad loss. But, like, I just think that he has lost in the past to guys that are just not that good. Whereas Tuivasa recently has only really lost to elite guys. And so has Tybura, to be fair. Recently, he's only lost to Volkov and Aspinall, who are both elite guys. And, I mean, Aspinall hasn't fought Ty, but he would smoke him. But I think that the low kick is going to be there for Ty. I think that Ty's going to take this one seriously because he knows he needs a win. He knows he needs to be back in the win column. And he's going to take this seriously and show some urgency. And I think that the low kick is going to be there. He can slow Tybura down with that low kick early, and it's going to set up the hands upstairs. And I think he could catch Tybura in round one if he really sets up that low kick early, backs him up against the fence and lets his hands go. But my official prediction will be tied to Tuivasa by round 2 KO. I think he'll get this one done, and I think he's going to get Marcin Tybura out of there pretty early. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll make another video reacting to the card, and I'll hopefully make a few videos next week for you guys, as well as a predictions and breakdowns video for next week's card. But don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment about what picks you agree with, disagree with, or any suggestions you have. I read all the comments, and I try to reply to them. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.